Are you borrowing money with the stimulus package due to COVID-19? Hey, this is Justin Hitt with Commercial Electrical Profits. A few electrical contractors have been asking about the upcoming recession and how to handle that so they can maximize profits and stay in business. Well, if you're borrowing a large amount of money to stopgap the fact that you may not have been able to do your contracts, this is even more critical. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get with your CPA. If you don't have a CPA, hire a CPA. They're fee-based, and they can sit down and talk with you about both tax and your overall business structure and positioning. You want to make sure you have solid bookkeeping so that your books are accurate and up to date at all times. You want to get with a tax attorney to make sure that your company is properly structured and that your taxes are being addressed accordingly. Some of these loans you're going to have to pay back. Some of the loans you may not have to pay back. It all depends on what's going on. You also want to sit down with your lawyer and to make sure that your contracts are clean. In a recession, things are going to get tight for a lot of people. You may have customers who drop out and can't make their payments, so you want to be looking at how you structure your receivables. Are you getting a deposit up front? Are you doing milestone payments? Do you have a good handle on your work in progress calculations and measurements? You want to make sure you're looking for projects that can pay. You want large projects that have funds. If you've got a lot of state and municipal contracts, you want to make sure those are fully backed by their budgets. You want to make sure that you're getting paid there. And sometimes the government will pay premium prices during a recession, but you want to understand that that's borrowed money. That's money that you're going to end up paying back in taxes. So that's why your tax strategy is so important. You want to make sure you're managing your cash flow so that your net positive cash flow is far exceeding the amount of debt obligation that you have. You want to make sure that you're cultivating assets that cash flow so that you can gain some passive value in your business itself to make sure that even if the economy tanks worse and customers drop out or contracts close or cancel, you'll be able to get the appropriate coverage for your debt so that you don't get bought out by a competitor. You may want to be thinking about your competitive buyout strategies, your mergers and acquisitions. Are there weaker competitors in neighboring communities, maybe even partners, that you can combine offices to reduce overhead while covering a larger business area? You want to go into your books and make sure that customers who need service contracts, who want to lock in pricing, are on board for some kind of service arrangement, because when the economy starts to suck, you want to make sure that they are getting the services that they need and you're getting the cash flow necessary to continue to deliver those services. You want to reevaluate your inventory. Do you have enough of the replaceable parts or common replaceable units in your inventory so that the core product that you support will have the materials it needs? We saw during this COVID some of the supply chain issues that we had from pharmaceuticals, getting medication from China, being manufactured in China, as well as getting masks and other medical equipment that's now manufactured in China. Well, if your HVAC system needs a part and the supplier cannot provide that part, you're going to have a broken HVAC in the middle of summer. The same goes with your customers. Breakers, transformers. It depends on really what kind of electrical work that you're doing, but you need to have the main components necessary to perform your typical job. You may not want to stack up your inventory because inventory is a cost center, but you may want to reevaluate your supply contracts with either supply houses. God forbid you're using a big box store, but you want to look at your supply chain and your procurement strategy to make sure that you're set up should there be a case where you can't get the parts that you need. Now, I've seen a number of contractors stock parts very strategically and even make available the parts they have in inventory to their competitors so that their competitors can finish jobs and they can make sure that they have a fast way to get stuff out of the warehouse. Remember, if you start warehousing equipment, additional vehicles, additional technicians that aren't producing, they all have care and feeding cost. So that stuff in the warehouse has square footage and the cost of square footage. Of course, you may want to own your building and sublet your building. That's a good inflation-adjusted income. But ultimately, it costs money to store things. If you add another truck on the road or you take a truck off the road. That's going to impact your reach and range as far as the types of jobs that you can do. And then you also want to look at some kind of reserve system to make sure you have the cash to make payroll. You don't want to lose a great technician because you couldn't do the paycheck. Now, we all see this here with the Paycheck Protection Program and the federal funds that are available. But let's say the government decides to shut down again and shut down access and mobility, which God forbid they do this again, because it is a violation of our freedom of association and some of the constitutional elements here. But if they've done it once, they can do it again. Make sure you can pay your people. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to reserve the funds somewhere where it's making interest, and if there are additional funds available like there are this time, that you don't use the borrowed money and then hedge it with the money that you have in reserve. But there's a whole cash management strategy there where you build these strategic reserves so that you can make sure you can weather a storm. And sometimes these reserves could be rolled over into, again, buying another business, again, expanding your territory. But you do want to make sure you do that in a way that lowers your overhead. You want to be able to have more technicians on the road with less overhead and still effectively serve your customers' needs. This list can go on. I do have a program, or it's actually a report called 101 Strategies to Create and Keep Profitable Customers, where we talk about communications. Right now is the time to increase your physical communications with customers. When they're online, they're being distracted by a lot of news media. They're being distracted by social media. If you sent a print newsletter today that was fun and interesting and positioned your company, it would get read. Believe me, it would definitely get read. But also your direct mail that sets up opportunities, your data mining that's going out and finding new prospects and buyers. Like I mentioned many times, we'll go and get actually in the electrical contracting world is you can get all of the building permits that are being set up by general contractors. You can get all kinds of special survey permits from your local, it depends on your jurisdictions, but you can get these early permits and start contacting contractors directly. If someone's surveying to put in an industrial park, that's a big clue. There might be some opportunities coming along down the line. So you want to look earlier in the data process to mine out that funding reserve that's being set aside by a state government to restore or to refurbish a sewage treatment plant. And that's the opportunity you get in there to start lobbying waste to energy. You may be hearing the city talk about for the last 5 years a solar farm to run municipality or to supplement local or regional power. And you just keep seeing it talked about. It's not being done. Now's the time to start farming that opportunity by contacting the decision makers, establishing the business relationships, doing a cost benefit analysis, getting hired as the consultant on the job rather than the person who's doing the work. So you can get paid as a consultant now, and later down the line, maybe even get a piece of that contract as the prime or get a piece of that contract as a sub. Don't limit yourself to the work you've always done, because in a recession, and actually got another program called Recession Busting. In a recession, sometimes these small bits of work, properly managed, properly packaged, can generate a cash flow so that you don't even notice that the rest of the companies are suffering. And in fact, when they can't pay their payroll, your competitor can't pay their payroll, you can snag up the best people in the marketplace. You want technicians that know how to sell a little bit. So they want to sell the value and benefit of the work that they're doing to reduce any buyer's remorse. And you may also want to start going up market. So you want technicians that could work in a house of an affluent individual and not look like a fool. And they follow the protocol for your company. And they can also look at manufacturing and look at the mid-level companies that are independently owned. Many of those folks will retool during a recession, and that gives you an opportunity to come in and put. Now, of course, I'm not talking about milking these guys out where you come in and do a retool and you do exactly what they asked for. I'm talking about strategic, consultative, and long-term benefit for the customer, where you get in these new flexible wiring systems, you get in these new grid planning, so that they can get more from the facility, and then you get them onto a service contract. So you come in, instead of doing the build more, 10 to 15 times and doing piece by piece, you lay out a whole plan for them, and you help that facilities manager really get the most from their space. And then you get a service contract on top of that, so that if they call anybody for any electrical work, they're calling you. It's just, we're going into a recession. We know we're going to have a recession. Government is giving away $2 trillion. They bitch and complain about China's supply chain, and then they borrow $2 million essentially from China and then give it away to the population. Something isn't going to work out about that. It's just going to be a problem. But guess what? They're still going to need electrical work. They're still going to need technology implementation. If you're doing any low voltage wiring, they're still going to need control systems, low voltage control systems. They're still going to be building factories. In fact, with the supply chain issue, you can look to see that more factories will be built in the United States. Some older buildings will be repurposed. And these are all opportunities for you. But if you're sitting around worrying about the economy, if you're sitting around worrying about what politicians doing what stupid thing, if you're sitting around being frustrated and concerned, you're going to miss out on these opportunities. And the biggest, most valuable contribution to maintaining and growing or improving this particular government here in the United States is this particular form of government, which is a representational democracy, is to get out there and practice the free market. Is to get out there and solve problems for your customers. Get out there and deliver valuable services. Get out there and interact and build your networks so that when tough times come, people keep coming to you. And to do it through what I call strategic relationships. It is the deliberate mapping and measuring of a marketplace so that you have the right services in the right place, and that you are moving up in the hierarchy of service providers, and you position yourself so that customers come to you before anybody else. It might mean you might not be able to do some jobs because they won't be profitable, but it'll definitely mean you'll be in the right place, moving towards the right solutions for customers who can pay and who value what it is that you do. I'm Justin Hitt with Commercial Electrical Profits. I want to thank you for listening to this program. This is our podcast series, and you can ask your questions at www.commercialelectricalprofits.com.